Hey, everybody, welcome. This is Georgine Adams, starting the Environmental Management Commission meeting for June 23rd. We have quorum and we have one more we think is gonna show up, but not seeing her on screen. Just a reminder to everybody, we need to have 5 members on screen to be able to hold quorum. But I think we've got that, and I will run through our roster just so everybody can wave and you can tell who's who. John Burns is with District 1 and he is not with us. We think he's out on the ocean someplace doing research. In the room here in Hilo, it's Laura Casso from District 2. The D on the screen is Del Atsuka, and I'm not sure where she's at physically. John Olson is in the room, he's from District 4. Melissa Cardwell on Zoom from District 5, thank you. Lee McIntosh also on Zoom from District 6. We still have a vacancy for District 7, so if you know anybody in whatever part of Kona that is nowadays, recommend them to join our group. District 8, we do have a new person, that's Dorothy Norris, but she is out traveling. So last one is me, Georgine Adams from District 9. So since we have quorum, we'll go ahead and move on to the minutes of May 24th and ask if I can get a motion. Motion from Laura, second, and John. Any comments, corrections? Seeing none, everyone approving, say aye. Aye. Any no's?
Aye.
Okay, we're done with that. Thank you again, Peter, for the gruesome job of doing our minutes. Statement from the chair. We've got some interesting things that we can be doing.
I'm sorry, Chair. Del Otsuka, did you vote on the minutes?
Okay. Del still does
Is Del
not-
present? Del not? Okay, thank you.
No, she did not, sorry. Don't know where she was. Okay, as I said, we have some interesting topics, I think, to go through today and perhaps tee up for next time. So looking forward to the discussion today. Public statements. We've got some testimony that has been provided, and I'm seeing a couple online, although both of these would like to speak at the beginning. And I hope everybody had a chance to read the testimony. It was very informative, and I appreciate it very much when we get comments from the public. To start off with, I think I need to find my screen, or I can let Peter find it for us.
Is this for testimony?
Testimony.
Yeah, we have Corey Harden and Jennifer Navarro.
Anybody else present who would like to give testimony in person? Okay, seeing none, we'll start with those two. Corey, if you could go ahead with your comments.
Yeah, well, good morning, commissioners, and thank you for your volunteer service. I'm speaking on 3 items, but just briefly, don't worry. So on VI2 on the reusable foodware, it's a very interesting idea, and I definitely wish Jennifer success with this wonderful idea. On V2, the landfill diversion ordinance, I support keeping recycles out of the landfill, but I don't support incineration. We've done that movie twice already with the proposals in 2008 and 2015. We had months of divisive debate and they were finally shot down. And as you know, at H Power on Oahu, taxpayers are paying penalties because they can't generate enough garbage to fulfill the contract. And last on VI1, Douglas Adams speaking on UMA and hydrogen. First, I have a lot of respect for Doug Adams, but I have a lot of concerns about UMA and how the county is interacting with them. I think that to see the UMA project in Minnesota, Mr. Adams had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so he can't tell the taxpayers who paid for his trip what he did on the trip. I did speak with Brittany Zimmerman, CEO of UMA, when she was at the Hilo Climate Fair, and I asked if UMA has any actual projects up and running. She said there were 5 in several states, but to get information, I would also have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. As you know, Resolution 73, which seemed written for UMA, never came to you folks. It skipped the normal review and was fast-tracked to the full county council. And their numerous supporters who were apparently organized in advance testified in support, and the public got less than a week's notice. Brittany Zimmerman has been speaking to influential individuals and groups statewide for months, and that begs the question of why the CEO of a large company with actual financial backers would spend time chasing county resolutions that have no force of law. And I don't think she's ever mentioned a physical corporate headquarters. Zimmerman claimed that UMA facilities could remove 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year from the environment. But consider to remove 16 billion tons a year, it would take all of the world's forest. How would UMA possibly do that? Zimmerman also cited nuclear energy as a renewable source. Not a good idea. Under Resolution 73, green waste, which is now given freely to people farming at a subsistence level, would be taken to make biochar, and people would be charged for it. And also farmers would need to start paying for mulch, and that would be shipped in over thousands of miles and wrapped in plastic. So those concerns, perhaps Mr. Adams could address them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harden. Jennifer Navarra from Zero Waste Hawaii. I've got Jennifer also on the agenda to talk about the reuse program and where she's at. But this is your time to give us official testimony, and so appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's an exciting agenda today. So I would like to give testimony on the ordinance. I think it's B2 on the agenda. Just in support. I'm glad to see the county moving in the direction, or I guess the EMC taking the lead on moving the county in the direction of adopting an ordinance that would help lead to some diversion. I gave kind of detailed comments in my written testimony, so I won't go through all of that there in the interest of time. But I do think it's a really great step in the right direction. And, you know, it's a draft right now. I know that a lot of it will change. I do think that it could be a bit more prescriptive. I'm interested in hearing from DEM what they think. You know, a lot is left up to them to determine by rule. And I know that they have low capacity. And so maybe having a bit more worked out in the ordinance itself might be of benefit, or maybe not. So interested to hear more about that today, hopefully. And just echoing Corey's concern, you know, incineration is not part of a zero waste philosophy. It is at the very bottom of the zero waste hierarchy. And it's, you know, never advised or recommended that we be burning our resources. And so, you know, an ordinance that is with the intention of doing something good I hope would not open the door to do something that I think we clearly have demonstrated over and over again in Hawaii County that we do not want to burn our resources. And then, which brings me to the second agenda item. I think it's V12, on the Yame project. It's kind of upsetting and concerning that the county is seems to be really heading in this direction where there's been little public input and feedback to do a project that I don't even understand how would be possible, considering that we have a contract with Waste Management right now where we owe them a certain amount of tipping fees, how we could start diverting all of our resources to a facility. I think initially, I met with Brittany months back, and initially it really sounds great. It is easy to be I guess wowed by these ideas, but when we really start thinking about this project in a zero waste context, why would we take our resources, which most of them are still very useful, like for example, glass or metal? We don't need to break metal and glass down to their base components to make them useful. It's not necessary. We can crush glass, and it's a commodity that we could use on this island. Corey already spoke to, our green waste and other things. So there's no need to use such fancy technology and burn our resources basically into biochar. And then there's such vagueness on detail that I don't really know what they're doing, but I did a little bit of research, which I provided those sources in my testimony. You can't just make biochar out of anything and it be safe. If we're burning plastic, the toxics will still be in the biochar. And then we're spreading that biochar all over our land. It doesn't make sense. It's not good. So there definitely needs to be some vetting. I know they have their non-disclosure agreement, but we need to know what they're planning to do and whether or not it's safe. And I don't think the topic really should be a discussion on financial feasibility, but it should really be about, is this what Hawaii Island and its residents want done with our resources? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Appreciate that. Sorry, I'm looking at Melissa on the screen. Jennifer, for your comments. Anyone else from the public to make comments now? Okay, hearing none. Move on. I understand Douglas Adams has to leave at 10, so we'll see what we can get through before then. In fact, I would like to move his discussion up ahead of the order that's in. But first I'll ask whether he's going to take a lot of time of whether or not we have any movement on the pretreatment rule. Chris? We're now looking at unfinished business.
I was muted there. Yeah, so I don't have it ready yet, and I apologize. I keep saying it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. But I have made progress. I've transferred, I think, everything I need to move out of the ordinance and into the our admin rules. So, think good thoughts. Maybe I can get to it this weekend and finish it up. But yeah, it's becoming a critical path issue. So it's pretty high on our list of priorities.
Okay. Like I said, I'm going to keep it on the agenda until
Yes.
so you can get tired of that. But at this time, what I would like to do is ask permission. I don't know that we need a vote per se to reorder the agenda to allow presentations that are in new business, specifically from Doug Adams, item 1, and Jennifer Navarro, number 2, and then go back to the unfinished business of the landfill ban for recyclables. Is that okay, commissioners?
If we make a motion to that effect.
Okay, we've got a motion with a second. Any discussion? Melissa? Are you voting?
No, I was seconding. I wasn't sure if there was a second.
There was, Laura seconded.
Okay, I didn't hear.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Commissioner
you.
Otsuka,
The,
no vote.
I don't, we still don't have Dell. Just your computer. So we'll skip ahead to new business and ask Douglas Adams, the director of no relation that we can know of, director of research and development, to talk about a couple of items that are pertinent to DEM. And see what he knows. You heard him. And what you can say, if that is indeed a restriction for you. But there were two items that I thought would be of interest to the commission, as well as obviously the public. And that was first on the resolution 7323 that wanted everything, all our waste to go to this biochar operation of UMAT, or UMA, how do they pronounce it? And the second item was just getting a little bit more understanding of the use of hydrogen that may be emitted from the landfills, and how real that particular option is. And I might ask Laura Ocasio, who stimulated the question about UMA, to feel free to ask specific questions or give some direction to you. I think we've shared some of the questions you've had, but basically it was down to, is it real? And is it something that is a benefit or not to this island? So take it away with that.
All right, thank you, Director of Research and Development Doug Adams in the County of Hawaii. First of all, as has been stated already, I've had the opportunity to serve on boards and commissions in the past as well, and the fact that you all are taking your time to do this and providing the service, because mostly a lot of the public doesn't recognize the immense amount of work that the boards and commissions actually do as a part of county work. And so thank you for your efforts, particularly in a technical area like environmental management. I know that we did have the director of environmental management on. I don't know if he's still listening or not, but Ramsey's still there. I promise Ramsey to embarrass you as much as I can.
That's why he grew the beard, so he's.
There it is.
Well, you're gonna be good at that. I'll go ahead. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Let me speak directly to the resolution 7323 initially. It would be short. I had nothing to do with that resolution. That's a council resolution, and we understand the council expressed its views through that resolution, having to do with the material, and we still have work to do as in the administration, and that work would be involving understanding the variety of materials that we have, how it can be used in a circular approach, frankly, to changing the way our economy works, changing the way that we currently are using, bringing, particularly importing products here, using them, and then turning them into waste, as opposed to using potential waste products as less waste and more of potential support for remediated products, for example. So I don't have much to say other than that on 7323. It is the view of the council. We, of course, in administration, pay attention to what the council says, but we also understand that there is the need to make sure that we're doing things that are in accordance with scientific best practices, as well as ensuring that the responsibilities that I have as a part of, as the director of the department that has in its charter, looking at equity concerns, looking at cultural concerns, looking at economic concerns and sustainability concerns. All of those things fall as a part of our charter mission. And those all need to be things that we're looking at when we're looking at how we're going to try and move forward in the area. So Ramsey and I have had these conversations over the last 2 years about how do we break down the silos to some degree that he has in environmental management and try and bring in opportunities for some of these more circular approaches, some of these more to borrow the phrase, waste to wealth opportunities. And so that's what I would say about that. If I could, on the hydrogen from landfills question.
Put it back up to you, May. I mean, we heard, not sure where we heard, that you had actually seen.
Okay, so I was going to get to that
Oh,
as a part of the question,
Okay,
the second conversation. So thank you for allowing me to do that. When it comes to hydrogen, as an energy source and also energy storage opportunity, the way that we look at these things, you have the ability for energy in terms of electrons and molecules. Hydrogen is primarily a molecule-based approach to energy, both the generation and the storage of it. And in that process, there will be we believe a way to make sure that we have the opportunity for choice, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in our grid, and the need to make sure that we have a diversified portfolio of energy generation and storage is something that we see as important moving forward. Specifically to the landfills, we are already flaring off methane, right? On the Hilo landfill, we had the grandfather clause from, you all know this, the grandfather clause that essentially allowed the methane just to be let off into the atmosphere. In West Hawaii, at least we have some capping capability that controls it, which in a way actually makes that landfill easier for us to capture the methane and be able to use it for a variety of sources, whether it's ammonia or whether it's hydrogen related activities. So we are not happy, frankly, that we're letting methane into the atmosphere. We don't think that's a good thing. I think that's true, Ramsey. You don't think that's a good thing, right?
Yes, it's not a good thing.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
Is it being, you said we have the ability to capture it, but are we capturing it in the form?
We're not.
Okay, just the ability, okay.
That's right.
I got
Yeah. Correct me here, Ramsey, but my understanding of West Hawaii is that
you.
we have the ability to cap it, but we don't have any of the correct infrastructure right now to in fact capture.
Well, there's two things. Wastewater could capture gases as well as sanitary landfill. The sanitary landfill on the west side, we do have a gas system collection within the landfill. We got headers, but now it's being flared.
Right, and that's being done with EPA. EPA gave us a certain amount that we can flare, and so we're not we're doing it in accordance with the EPA guidance.
so it's flaring at West Hawaii?
Yes, because we have it's a new landfill, so the biodegradation of the waste probably is gonna take years. The east side landfill, which has high quantity of gases, that's the one that we trying to see how we could capture that.
That's right. So to follow up on that, thank you, Director. To follow up on that, landfills can be used to create these other generation sources like hydrogen, right? I've had briefings from folks that have talked to me about creating ammonia as well, and then being able to use the ammonia here for fertilizer process, for example, because right now we know that fertilizer is extremely expensive as we need to import it, and it's based on primarily fossil fuel generation. So the ability to actually do that as well is something that is of interest to us. all of these things scientifically look great, and if we could just snap our finger, all that would be great. But of course, there's financial considerations as well as the processes and systems that we already have in place here. So none of this is being done within a vacuum. It has to fit within the both financial, but to some degree, even more importantly, will be how do we want it to work for us over the long term, right? And so we have in fact sent out an RFI 2 years ago. We had an infrastructure RFI request for information that was responded to by around 35 different entities addressing a variety of different infrastructure issues. Just this week, we released a second RFI specifically tied to clean energy generation and well, let me just read directly from it so I don't make it up, and we can get this to you for the minutes. So we're requesting information from the community and innovators on climate change solutions, specifically a net zero emission, parent green hydrogen and renewable energy, closed parent, economy and sustainable infrastructure development. Purpose of the RFI is to identify viable climate change mitigation and adaptation opportunities. We can consider opportunities related to green hydrogen, renewable energy, and sustainable infrastructure for a post-carbon economy. Specific categories include solid waste and wastewater, renewable energy infrastructure, sustainable transportation, quality of life, and the catch-all, everything else. So we will be looking and accepting responses specific to, in the solid waste and wastewater area, the energy profile transformation, so waste to energy. And I think it's important here because I've heard this as a part of the consideration. I'm in absolute agreement, the department's in absolute agreement, the county is in absolute agreement that incineration is the wrong way forward, right? No incineration, we get that. And so that's the waste to energy, parent owner incineration, closed parent. Reduction in energy use and greenhouse gas production, solid / wastewater disposal and management that is compliant with existing statutes and ruling, and green hydrogen production, storage, distribution, and consumption. And then the variety, you've got renewable energy infrastructure with a variety of areas, sustainable transportation, and quality of life. So I'll make this, this is request for information 4444, very nicely done. That was released on June 19th. It's a 30-day lead. We'll be, if we haven't done so already, we'll be releasing a press release from the mayor's office that further makes the fact that this is out there visible, and we're looking for responses in the variety of those areas. That all goes to say that no decisions have been made on our way forward, right? As a part, is it okay, Ramsey, for me to talk about phase 2 of the Hilo wastewater? May I speak to that?
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
Sorry, just because.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I mean, go ahead, take that question. Go
Is
ahead.
that I'm sorry, I should ask you.
Laura.
Thank you. So just I have a question about this RFI. Why, if we're looking at renewable and clean energy, why is incineration, or how is that in the same RFI?
No incineration.
No incineration. Okay, I misunderstood. Got it.
Absolutely no incineration.
Okay, and that's in that, the RFI is not asking for request on that. Got you. Okay. I haven't read it, so I'm.
Of course you haven't read it, right?
I'm going off.
I was trying to say that it's amazing how we could say that. I was specifically trying to say
Solid waste, got it.
no incineration. I clearly need to work on my communication skills.
No.
So, I think, and so on the part of the conversation that we've had about the Hilo wastewater treatment plant and its move forward, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to walk into any procurement conversation here, but the key is that we're looking at diversion possibilities for the wastewater and how that can be used. How it can be used is not necessarily just for energy, but we think that that's a good use of it. And so what this particular document is intended to help us with is that we've had a variety of conversations with lots of people. And what we wanted to do was gather that into a single response setup so that we can then really move forward with some decisions on what makes the most sense. And this is a part of that community conversation, but obviously we need to have community conversations. But in fact, we have been having community conversations, as you know, right? We have these conversations all the time about what is the way forward, what makes the most sense. But having some of the folks that would actually be involved in the processes themselves, understanding what they're talking about, and to some degree, the financial aspects, not the impacts, but the aspects of that, because it's not a request for proposals, just request for information. There is no guarantee of any type of financial remuneration associated with responding to this. It's information and allowing us to set up the stage so that we can then move forward with the right kind of questions, the right kind of scopes of work, as we move forward in the doing the things that we want to do, particularly in the environmental management area. I went to Minnesota because that's where I was told that EMA was engaged. They had folks that were engaged in the work that was going to make hydrogen in a new way. The non-disclosure agreement that I signed is specific only to the actual process for making hydrogen. So I can talk about my trip. I can talk about the elements that I saw, which if you're inclined to hear me do that, I'll do it at this point.
Well, I said that, I think the biggest question was, is it still R&D that's happening, piloting at best, or is it proven technology?
Yes, I think the answer is both. So let me explain why I say that. One of the things that I was concerned about walking into the trip was whether or not this was a scalable technology. I feel very comfortable that it's scalable. The people that I met with were not specifically well, EMA is essentially, I should leave the description of EMA to its CEO. There are a host of partnerships that company has. And who I had the opportunity to meet with were the folks that were involved in concrete development. Folks that have had decades, and when I say decades, I mean like 3 and 4 decades in the construction trade and the creation of cement products using the standard Portland cement elements that are part of the way that concrete is made for use around the country and, dare I say, probably around the world. And that is primarily a limestone driven material. What I saw required no limestone, and it also required no incineration. And it was being done by the folks that have been doing this with concrete production for decades. I'm not a concrete expert. I don't claim to be a concrete expert, but I do claim to be able to ask questions and work through making sure that I understand what I'm being shown and what I'm being told. So I can tell you that I feel is not the right term. Let's be precise here. What I saw allows me to think that the total process that is being used to create what is essentially product for testing, and then to see the tests themselves is something that is both feasible. Not only is it feasible, I saw it in action, and that it is also scalable, given what they are putting into it. So that's why I will tell you that I think I'm That's about as far as I can go in terms of saying that. The other part of this, the other opportunity that I had when I went out there was to meet with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, National Research, term here, National Road Research Alliance folks. And they are connected to the Department of Transportation, MDOT. And they run there's a couple of these around the country that have the kind of reputation of, if you have a concrete, or if you have a cement product concrete goes into, that you want this tested by these places. One is in Miami, and generally that's hot weather related kind of stuff. And then one is Minnesota, but the one in Minnesota is available for everybody to come to. So they run their tests during the spring through the fall time period. And they replace these, they have both low volume, which means slow speeds and these sensor opportunities, but not as much traffic. And then they have an interstate right next to their office area where they do their work. And that's a part of the interstate that runs through Minnesota. And they have a side piece of that they replace these cements, and folks run across, right? Vehicles run across. And they're able to, through their sensor networks, check to see what the viabilities of these, but they don't just put it in until they actually have the, all of the regular research and testing has been done. They're not going to put anybody at risk by putting these things in there. Anyway, I had the opportunity to go on the slow and the low volume one, actually drove around and stop, look at what they're doing with their sensor systems, talk to the director of the program, talk to the folks that are the operational ends of the program, saw what they were doing. I tell you all this because they were excited to be bringing this particular cement into their process. They had an understanding, the particular director had an understanding of what was happening here. The idea of them being able to test it was something that they were very, very interested in being able to do. So why am I talking about cement when we're talking about hydrogen? The reason I'm talking about cement is because this is one of the processes that has the creation of the cement sends out both hydrogen and oxygen. So either you get water, H2O, or you get hydrogen and pure hydrogen or pure oxygen, depending on what the requirement is. And then the idea is to have the off-takers for that. So that's why we're talking about cement, because of the process of developing the cement. That's how they are able to create the hydrogen that we would be interested in having, either for generation or for storage purposes.
But from our side, the question is, the feedstock is waste,
The feedstock is waste.
Okay,
but they don't burn.
Correct, it's not burnt.
is it pyrolysis considered incineration or?
No, it's pyrolysis, which is not incineration.
Okay.
It's not incineration.
Well, let me. Simple minds, simple questions. To what level does this increase any component that increases greenhouse gas?
It reduces greenhouse gas emissions.
In other words, the end product is going to be less than the beginning product.
That's correct, because it sequesters the carbon inside it.
And it's an escape-proof environment.
I'd like to say 100% yes, but I'm not the scientist in this, so I can't say that. What I can say is, from what I saw, that I think that's that there's a really good chance that that's correct.
So it is bound up in the concrete production process.
Right. I should probably be accurate here, but I believe it's cement they're making. The concrete is a portion of that. So in the development of the concrete for the cement, the concrete itself is where the carbon is being stored. Cement itself has a variety of other aggregates and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. I've built several, probably close to 100 concrete boats. I arrived here on one of my boats.
Nice.
So, interesting process, obviously, need to know more about.
Right, and I think from the county's perspective, we have had these conversations, but we have conversations with folks all the time, right? And the idea of finding a way that will allow us to reduce importation, reduce the costs associated with transportation, we think that that's worth our while. And so that's part of the reason for, looking at this. The idea of trying to take 2 million gallons that flow daily of treated effluent into, Kettle Bay and remove that and have it used in a way that's supportive of a variety of functions, whether, energy being one. We think that that is a way forward. We think that that's potential for circular economy related activities. Are there other uses for some of the inputs that might go into him? Absolutely. Are there decisions that would have to be made on what's going to be allowed to be used if in fact this was one of the ways that we went forward? Yes, clearly. But that's part of the reason why the RFI is so important. We want to gather that information so we understand what we're talking about in a totality, as opposed to just having elements that are kind of talking to us. And that gives us then at the county, the receipt of that information then allows us to have the kind of conversations with our communities that people are interested in having as well.
Yeah, I have a few questions, but I'll let other people go first if they don't ask questions.
Go ahead.
You're up.
So just to confirm that it's that what you went to visit was a test site.
Yes.
Okay, and
I've driven over it myself.
Hey,
there you go.
Lived in Minnesota.
nice,
I know.
a test site. Okay, and then we don't know what's the specifics of what's being diverted. Or what can be diverted.
It's my understanding it can be just about anything.
Okay,
Carbon related.
okay. And then. The other question is, because I'm not an expert in incineration or pyrolysis, but I'm seeing that you're making a clear distinction between incineration and pyrolysis. But I hear the word pyro inside pyrolysis, so it automatically thinks that something.
You're flying.
I think something burned and incineration in my mind is also burning. So if you could maybe summarize your clarification on what you're seeing as a distinction, and then also going back to the RFI. Seeing that incineration is not included in renewable, but is pyrolysis considered? If the distinction is.
Oh, sure, we would imagine that we would receive information on folks that would be using pyrolysis as a part of their process, for sure.
Okay, so can you make a distinction?
For you?
More or less briefly to the commission?
Doug, I guess part of it is you could generate heat either by chemical reaction, thermochemical, or incineration. I think in this situation, I think they're proposing through thermodynamic chemical reactions. So by breaking down, generating heat through chemical reactions. That's how I understood it in conversation. Therefore, it's not like burning, but it's through chemical reaction to create enough heat. Because you need heat to create biochar or anything else. So I just want to remind you all, when that resolution came in, we talked about it. But the idea is we need to explore what's out there to be able to meet the 2026. At least we need to try to see what technologies that exist. So the concept of what we're trying to do is go out there and see what technology and see what type of entities that could respond to our RFI and also assist the county to be able to go to waste to energy, try to divert some of our current resources to better resources. I heard the biochar. The biochar is, yeah, I mean, once you create it, it has great advantages when it comes to carbon dioxide emission reduction. We could reduce tons and tons of CO2 per year having the biochar. You know, how are we going to get to the biochar? It could be also chemical reactions through these organic materials that could turn woods to biochar. You don't have to burn it, but you could generate heat through chemical reaction to create it. Biochar could reduce greenhouse gases. It's good for irrigation fertilizers as well. You've seen every time we have a fire, the next year that area blooms so good because it enhances it's a nutrient to the soil. So also it's great for our water from a filtration you know, systems. So there's a lot of advantages to the biochar, and it does reduce greenhouse gases, N2O, which is nitrous oxide, and it could also eliminate the methane gas as well. And these are the greenhouse gases that you could control them by the biochar itself. So yeah, we're trying to explore as much as we can to get into the right direction of being sustainable and yet bring this county to a better stage of you know, greenhouse control, reduce the greenhouse gases. Good, I see.
We have a couple of questions from the commissioners, and I want to take advantage since I think Doug has to leave at 10.
I'm supposed to be over on the other side of the island, unfortunately.
Oh, well, you're not gonna make it.
I won't, I don't have to be there twice then. Anyway.
Right, Lee, I think you had your hand up, if you put it down? No, okay, Melissa.
I really appreciate this presentation, and I do think it's really important to gather as much information as possible. And I just can't stop thinking about this conference I went to a couple years back, where Mike Ewald, who's on this meeting today, made it very clear that pyrolysis is not the direction that we want to move in. And so I couldn't remember exactly what pyrolysis is, and so I just was looking it up. And so essentially it is still heat. It's basically heating without the use of oxygen, whereas incineration is with the use of oxygen. So that's the difference. So it's still it's still something where we have to heat things up to a very high temperature. It's just without oxygen. So I just think it's really important not to try and greenwash this and make it seem like it's something that doesn't also have consequences. And, you know, I also hear about biochar, but, you know, all the things, Ramsey, that you just said, all of the benefits of biochar is also the benefits of mulch. And so why would we then heat something up which has a similar benefit to, you're shaking your head no, but I don't know. I keep thinking about what Jennifer Navarra said too, you know, that sometimes the solution is simpler than we think. And I just want to kind of like put that out there on the table. I'm not an engineer, you know, but I don't know. I think there might be some simpler solutions, and sometimes technology is wonderful. It gives us all kinds of amazing things, but sometimes it also complicates things, and we tend to want to do this fancy thing that maybe is not in the best interests of our island in particular. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, just to let you know that the heated organic material without introducing oxygen. It's like suffocation. It'll be all controlled in a vessel. So, and that's how you start the process. So, yes, there's plus and minuses, but if your pluses overweigh the minuses, it's kind of the benefit analysis. When somebody gets sick and they're going to do a surgery, there's certain things the doctor is going to tell you. Either, you got to weigh the benefits, right? Sometimes you got to analyze it that way. So, and that's true for everything we do in life. So if we need to move with technologies that gonna get us there, that's the only way to move forward. If we're gonna be simple, then we're gonna stay simple. And we're not gonna meet certain goals.
All right, I'm gonna cut you off, Ramsey, because I
Sure.
think Doug would like to respond.
Melissa, thanks. Let me just say, I completely concur. We want it to be as cheap as we can make it, and we want it to be as non-technical as we can make it, right? And so we're part of this, part of our query is to see if those things exist out there. We do know, and I know that you are aware of this, none of this is being done in a vacuum. Our ability to make it financially feasible probably means, in some cases, the use of existing distribution methods, for example, and potentially even production facilities that we can, retrograde, fix. These become all of these things are on the table for the purpose of getting us where we want to go, which is reliable, renewable energy, so that all of our community, not just the current members of the community can afford this stuff, but all members of our community can see the benefits associated with receiving affordable, renewable, reliable green energy. And if we can do that using some of the sources of waste that we have as well, then all of that to the better.
Yeah, in addition, we're being transparent. We haven't started anything. That's why we're having these type of discussion. It's for you guys to be part of it. And as we move forward, whoever end up submitting the RFI could do a presentation for you as well, and you guys could ask as many questions as you want. And we will ask as many questions as we need, because we need to make sure we select the right people, if somebody out there that could deliver on what just Doug has explained.
Chris, you had
I see Chris is on.
Did you have a comment to offer?
Yeah, a couple of things. So I liked what Melissa said. Simple is oftentimes better. And when you start thinking about these wonderful, amazing, incredible new technologies that are available, keep in mind that, from the wastewater side, our job is to collect the wastewater, we treat the wet wastewater, and we discharge it. So something in addition to that is not something we're set up to do. We have a hard enough time staffing our existing facilities, right? So a new fancy biochar facility is not something we have the ability to staff. We could at some point, but we'd have to hire people and we'd have to develop a program to manage that. So you're probably looking at contracting that out, and then you get into all kinds of issues with that. Also keep in mind that exciting new technology usually comes with, hey, we did this in the lab and it works fantastic. We want to scale it up. We want to experiment on your facility. And sometimes that works, but oftentimes the bench scale process just doesn't scale up and it doesn't work. So a fair amount of skepticism and critical thinking about what is it, how can we use it, and will it actually be beneficial, or will it take up more resources? And then the final thing I had for now is on Oahu, we had a composting program where we take green waste, mix it in with the biosolids and compost it, right? So that worked great. The problem was the green waste seemed to have a lot of plastic in it. So while we produced this wonderful mulch and tried to give it away for free, most people said, oh, it's got too much plastic in it. So even simple sounding things like that are fraught with these difficulties. And it's going to take some time and effort to figure out how to get to the solutions.
Thank you, Chris. Just trying to be fair around the room here. John, you have a question?
Just a comment, I mean, finding a place at the table on the energy side. I mean, I followed the IRP process, you know, for this island from day one. And you're gonna have a tough time finding a place at the table. Between solar, wind, you know, we go down the list. I mean, there's no gonna be a welcome sign out for another competitor for a place on the grid. And individually, everybody's going solar because they own it. That stuff on the roof is my property. And have a nice day. So,
It's nice to be the county.
hmm?
People, it's nice to be the county. People do actually ask you for your opinions.
Yeah, well, you're gonna, in that case, you're gonna get an opinion whether you want it or not.
No,
Yeah,
so to your point, you're absolutely right. You gotta be at the table.
yeah,
And so that has been part of our, both in terms of being in the PUC and looking at the dockets that are associated with a variety of, whether it's utility or any of the other generators. We're in constant conversations with those folks as well.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. We have to be there.
yeah.
Melissa, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to organize my thoughts because I guess I have a couple questions and I have a comment. What Chris just mentioned about the compost and there being plastic in the compost and the mulch, that we have a similar problem here. But for in my mind, it also kind of begs the question, like if we can't figure out something as simple as mulch and keeping plastic out of mulch, how are we going to pull together a very, like, pyrolysis is fairly complicated and there's a lot of toxic gases that result as in the process of pyrolysis. And so, you know, that's to be considered. And I guess my question is, if this RFI goes out and all the information is gathered and it points to pyrolysis maybe not being the best option for us, is the county open to hearing that? And then what? You know, is there a plan B, or are we just, this is, you know, we're at this place of getting information and then we'll see, you know, what comes back as a result of it?
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Like,
Right, Ramsey.
Yeah, at this time, like I said, we in the search of informations. Our challenge here, we got 2.8 million gallon water going to the ocean. Everybody said, don't send it to the ocean. Now we're trying to find a solution, and that's what we have. We have 600 tons a day going to a landfill. Everybody say, don't take it to a landfill. We're trying to, so yeah.
It's the problem with the democracy.
Yeah.
Very
so you get
inefficient.
So the idea here is we are trying to find information to make sure that we do the right thing moving forward.
I'll just make my comment. You know, Melissa, these are tough problems. You've laid out some of the issue. As I tell my folks, we don't have a choice. We've got to do something, right? So we have to figure out what that is. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's technological. It may be social. We've had the conversations about, and this is some of the stuff that Jennifer talks about, as well as my friends that are in the room here, right? How do you assist social behavior in potentially changing as well? My concern about changing social behavior, however, and they've heard me say this, is that if we do it, we have a tendency to forget about the folks that are on a low or moderate income, that have not had the opportunity necessarily to join. And it is a big deal for me that we don't go down the path that says we have to completely reduce everything else and therefore you're not gonna ever have a chance to move into the strata, if you will, or the area of socioeconomic support that that they haven't had a chance to be at. So we actually focus on, part of our work is to focus on how do we make sure that we're taking care of the folks that are in that low to moderate income class, for lack of a better phrase, socially disadvantaged, are you know, the migratory diaspora that you're getting, climate refugees that we're getting, right? How are we taking care of them? Because we feel if we can figure that out, which is not an easy calculus, by the way, but if we can figure that out, then that will actually help everybody else. So we're looking at those folks as being the folks that we can focus on. If we can fix things so that they are able to have an affordable standard of living, a quality of life that allows for, and quality of life in mind is a single job that if you have, you know, 2 folks in the household or 1 in the household, they're able to take care of the, you know, where you don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs kind of idea, right? So bottom line for me is that we don't have a choice. We've got to do something. It isn't going to go away. The climate setup, the climate, we all talk about the existential crisis that is the climate change crisis. We have a variety of those. Demographies are part of that as well, demographic sizes and all that. So, but we can't not do something. We have to do something.
That's perhaps a good place to transfer to other ideas. I would also like to say I was on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and one of our top priorities was whatever we decide to do, we need to look at the life cycle impacts.
Yep.
You look at it as a whole. You can go broader to sustainability, which looks at the economic and social impacts as well. You've got to analyze it all. You've got to look at it. And dang, it's hard to look at all that stuff.
We
But
actually,
you gotta take a crack at it, and
Absolutely
you
right.
gotta keep up to date as new information comes in the door. You go, holy cow, all that road just disintegrated in Minnesota. So we've gotta go back, and our assumptions need to be adjusted, and we do it again and again and again as new technologies show up. So I think that the idea is good. We're trying to gather information, and part of I wanted to get it on the agenda, and we'll talk again if we get to the landfill stuff. You've got to look at it, you've got to analyze it, you got to weigh and balance. There's no perfect solution, no silver bullet ever. And so we'll muddle through. And I think what's happening is good. We're trying to collect information, and the challenge for this county and for this commission is having the time to just sit down and look at it all and make good decisions. So on that happy note.
if I may just, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I really appreciate these questions. We are actually looking within our department. We actually have folks that are assigned to look at circular economy and how that can work here. We're in pretty good position being an island, right? And so the idea of being able to figure out what that looks like here, and then in the considerations of it, what the county is interested in hearing, what the county will listen to. We are not tied to any particular type of process. What we're tied to is trying to achieve a quality of life and a standard of living that is going to be consistent for everybody. And then using that as the foundation for the questions we ask ourselves and the questions we ask about the things that we learn. And so that's where we're going. It's part of the reason that we have the conversations that we have in terms of the circular city piece that's here focused in Hilo. All of these are ways for us to move in a direction that allows us, we think about 2042, 20 years from, last year. It's when we started thinking about, we think about what does that look like? Because if we're not thinking about that, if we're not trying to figure out what 2042 looks like, by the time we get there as a county, we won't have necessarily gotten where we want to. We have to identify what it is in 2042 is our guide, our guidepost, and then work our best to try and move in that direction.
I just wanted to kind of go back and just for the record to clarify that I think there's two things at play here. And one is that we're talking about, energy production and waste to energy. And then there's another conversation in the room, which is really about zero waste and landfill diversion and reduction in consumption. So from a zero waste model, pyrolysis, I believe, as in addition to incineration, pyrolysis is not on that hierarchy. And so there's like two pieces, and I'm really concerned. I believe it was last EMC meeting when it was we were informed that recycling, RFIs and information about waste diversion and recycling and those kind of things are put on hold until an RFI like this brings back information, but it's including pyrolysis, which is fundamentally resource destruction. And I think that's where kind of the maybe friction between the two ideologies are coming into
I
play.
understand your point, and I think we'll talk about it when we get to looking as
Yes.
an example at the landfill ban concept
But
and
in
how we could tackle it.
Yes.
So I just to move our agenda along, which it hasn't gotten stuck here. I'd like to say we're not done. None of us are done. And it is a very important discussion and gathering information, and I want to thank you very
Yes,
much
thank you.
for coming.
When does this close? That is another technical.
It's a month long, so end of July.
Thank you for your.
Right, absolutely. I'll give you a copy to see what happens.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And if I may, and this is completely out of order, and you can send it, but what Jennifer's gonna talk to you guys about, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm gonna let her go next because she's hanging in there. So
thank you all.
thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Doug.
We'll be
Thanks,
in touch.
Director.
Thank you, Director, too. Thank you. Great job as always.
Can you send me a note to do that?
Okay,
Aloha, thank you.
to
Appreciate it.
try to, thank you again. Try to give Jennifer a break. Why don't we go ahead and let her talk about her really good project at the top of the pyramid of reusable foodware. Although we're supposed to use our fingers, right? The point. Anyway, Jennifer Navarro, are you ready?
Yes. Can I share my?
You're breaking up.
Give me 1 second. Please.
Okay.
I still breaking first. Just within my.
We can't hear her. It's breaking.
So that's by technology.
You're still breaking up, Jennifer.
Switch. I'm gonna switch to my different internet.
So we see you.
Give me 1 minute.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Ooh, that's
It's like
worse.
it's a weird robot. You've gone sci-fi on us.
Share my screen.
Even technology cannot be simple.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
I was
It's your voice that we're not getting.
if you want to pause this, try to figure out what's going on.
Brief recess.
Well, do we need a bathroom break anyway?
Fast.
Okay, I am declaring a 5-minute bathroom break and we will try again with Jennifer. Peter, 2, 3. Got 5, so we're okay. All right, we're back in session. And we're hoping that we can hear Jennifer without breaking up.
Yes, I hope so too. I live in the boonies, so I have trouble with my internet. But I'm really happy to go ahead.
No, you sound great.
Okay, good. So really happy to be here today to talk to the commission about a project we've been working on in Hilo. And this is, more shifting conversation towards, the zero waste hierarchy and really reducing the amount of waste that we create. The waste prevention side of things is really critical and key. And so, we're looking specifically here at what we call foodware, which is like our takeout cups and containers. Really the scope of this is anywhere food is being put into a container on site. So this could be a school cafeteria or a hospital or an elder facility or a Meals on Wheels program, or it could also be restaurants, coffee shops, Foodland, where we all love to get our poke. And so, that's the scope of the work that we're doing. And we're specifically starting in Hilo, but this is something that we would love to see be a countywide program once we get started in Hilo. And this is a project that would not be at all possible without working with Perpetual, and I'll go into more detail and introduce Ellie, who's on the call today, who's the executive director of Perpetual, and I think we also have Ellen on here today, who's part of our team. And I'm just trying to change slides. Did it shift for you guys? Slow internet. Well, I'll go ahead and just keep talking. So it didn't go forward for you guys, this slide?
No, it's still on this first one.
I'll try sharing another screen. Just to stop sharing. While I'm dealing with this, sorry, my slow internet is a frustration. Okay, here we go.
Not yet.
Like the magic here, like the magic.
Okay, I'll keep, okay, but it started at
Yay.
Almost.
gee, yeah, but it's not where I need it to be. Sorry. I thought that doing a PDF would be faster for the internet, but looks like not so much.
Well, the other option is you just talk through it and send it to Peter and he'll distribute it to us.
That'd be great.
All right. Are you guys seeing it now? Starting to load?
No.
Okay,
says
so I'll get, I'll just,
It's loading.
okay, all right,
But you
I
know
see
what?
it now,
We-
so.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I apologize for that. So, introduce myself for those of you that don't know. I'm Zero Waste Hawaii Island, the program director. We are now a fiscally sponsored nonprofit, starting at the beginning of this year, which is kind of exciting because it gives us the ability to get money and pay people to do this work as opposed to just all volunteer. But we did start out as a community group in 2019, doing outreach in the community. We hosted a monthly meeting and did events. And then pandemic, we kind of shifted our emphasis to really think about system level changes. Some of those socioeconomic things that have been discussed today. You know, we realized that like living this zero waste lifestyle really was not accessible to most people unless we change our systems. And so we've been focusing on some policy work, some state level policy, and really have been looking at reducing waste specifically around packaging. We started a small pilot program last year, late last year, called No Paho, and we're working with the Locavore store to pilot reusing glass beverage containers. And so they have 2 of their products in these bottles, and hoping to expand this service around, to more businesses in Hilo and maybe island-wide one day. So our team is expanding. Like I said, we have some funding now thanks to our work with Perpetual. And we've been able to bring Kule on board. She's working as our cultural advisor and outreach coordinator. Really excited to have her on board. Helps us to like expand what has been a very narrow demographic, hopefully, to a larger audience for zero waste. And then we have Ellen Okuma, who's really been the lead and financial and, the person washing the containers for the No Paho project. So that's really been her baby. And she's retired librarian and brings like a wealth of research experience and a lot of connections within the community to our team. Lori Rich is our operations advisor. Devin Brown is a UH Hilo student with the Bonner program, and he is working on a project to do reuse in the cafeteria for their takeout containers. And then finally, we have our fiscal sponsor, and also she's part of our team in terms of helping us with strategic planning and organizational development. And so now to introduce Perpetual, and they really are the lead on this project. This is something that they're spearheading. They're a relatively new nonprofit, but they really come to help communities help to design and implement these reuse systems. And the reason for this is because, this idea is something that there's lots of startups really around the world doing, but we're seeing it happening at a very small scale and as kind of an option, as opposed to being the default. And so there's some real benefits to having reuse systems operating at scale, which I'll go into. But the goal of Perpetual is really to bring all of the stakeholders together to design and create these systems. And once we have a model, hopefully, this idea can expand across communities in the US and around the world. And so in addition to working in Hilo, Perpetual is also working in Ann Arbor and Galveston, Texas. And then coming soon, they'll be also launching in Savannah. And Galveston and Ann Arbor, the timelines are staggered, so they're a little bit ahead of us, and they've already done some community design workshops or in the phase of actually designing these systems for those communities. Here's the Perpetual team. Ellie is the executive director. She has a lot of background and experience in working in sustainability in the corporate world. And she's mainly her and Autumn are mainly the people that we work with here in Hilo. Dagny also is, highly involved, but she's in Paris. And so because of the time difference, we don't interact with her as much. And so Ellie's on here today. She's like way more expert on this than I am. So if there's any questions, she's usually the go-to person that knows way more about these things than I do. So the process that Perpetual is using is really working in collaboration. So they not only have their academic partners, their corporate partners, behavioral science. We know like human behavior change is a really difficult thing, and around waste management in particular. But then they also have the partnerships within the local cities. So Zero Waste Hawaii Island is playing that lead local partner. We're the connecting point to community members, to organizations. We'll assist with, the community engagement and business engagement. And then if we get as far as launching something, we would help with managing volunteers. There's also like the great possibility to partner with governments and city. At minimum, like I know like in Hilo, we're going to at least need some cooperation from government to, site washing or return bins, like at the transfer stations or around town. And, the potential is like really to be determined. And there probably will be different governance models, and the amount of involvement from the government will vary across the state. And that's great to have different models for different communities to look at to see what works for them. And then the other critical piece of this is having a reuse service provider. And that really is like the business that is going to do the logistics to make a reuse system work. And so right now, this is kind of like, it really, this figure to me is exactly like the discussion that we've been having earlier today around Yame, the extraction of resources, shipping things all around to have a container that we use for 20 minutes to eat our takeout food, which we then dispose of, and then we often dispose of in really harmful ways for the environment. And so, this is our linear economy. And so I think that like as a society, that's where we are in this debate, right? Like, do we really want to transition to something that's circular, or do we want to continue the business as usual, which is like the extraction of resources and then wasting of those resources? And so for foodware, reuse really makes sense. It makes sense for Hawaii, where we are isolated and the cost of freight to ship things here is really high. So wouldn't it be great if we shipped containers here, or even better, if we made those containers here on island? That would be the ideal situation. But it makes more sense, like to have those containers circulating within the community and not creating so much waste that the county has to manage. I'm gonna take one pause. I'm like getting over a cold, so I'm struggling with my voice a little, I'm sorry. So reuse is really a critical solution for plastic waste and pollution. There was a 2020 study that found that reuse is really the largest lever for reducing plastic waste and pollution. And successful reuse systems really have a lot of benefits to society. I think my mind and a lot of people's minds probably immediately jump to those environmental benefits of less pollution and less litter, less toxics going into the environment from the extraction and manufacturing of single-use containers. And then also the greenhouse gas emissions that go along with shipping things and making things. But there's also some huge economic benefits as well. There's comparable cost for businesses if the system is set up to operate at scale. We don't want it to cost more to businesses to adopt this system, and it will be cheaper if we can do it at scale. Also, there's the reduction of source issues. Like we have a lot of supply chain disruptions, especially since the pandemic. Businesses, every business I've talked to, they're keen on this idea because they're having trouble getting those single-use takeout containers. And so having a stock of containers here on the island that we can recirculate and reuse will cut down on those problems. Also, money will stay in the local community and we'll have less waste to manage as a county. It's also a better experience for people for eating and drinking, reduces exposure to toxic chemicals. A lot of our disposable containers, even the ones that we think of as being more sustainable, like those molded fiber compostables, those contain PFAS lined to help with the moisture absorption. And so, we're being exposed to toxic chemicals when we consume foods out of these. And so we want the toxics out of our food containers, and that's a big goal of reuse systems. Also has the potential to create local jobs, income source for collectors, and it's also a point for community connection. I think we all come together to do events and we gather, and a lot of times what ends up being the product of that is waste. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could come together and share and not generate so much waste when we do that. So we kind of look at, there's two kind of different ways that things can circulate in a reusable container system. There's the closed loop, which is a little less complicated. This is like a university cafeteria or a school cafeteria. It's where the containers are staying on site in one location. There's some examples of this happening at very large scales. Our Cup is working with large events to reuse cups, which is a huge endeavor. And then the more complicated thing is this closed loop system. And this is, you know, where you're getting your coffee or your takeout, you're taking it home with you, you're walking around town with your coffee or your boba tea. And then you need to find a place to dispose of that container, or not dispose of, but return the container. And so this is actually where we're not seeing anything happening at any large scale yet. Like I said earlier, there's like lots of small startup businesses doing this where it's an option, but we've learned a lot from doing this. Yeah, what we've learned, what works and what doesn't work. To have these open loop systems, we need tracking for the containers themselves, the logistics and the washing and all of that. And so there's some examples of, oh, not yet, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So to explain a little bit about how this reusable takeout containers or container systems work, we can start here in this redistribution. And this is when a business would be stocked with reusable items. They wouldn't actually pay for those items until they're checked out by a customer. And so they would, instead of paying like for the container itself, they're paying a service fee, which should be comparable to what they're paying for the disposable containers. And then once they're checked out, we don't want there to be any cost to the customers in doing this. And this is definitely not the way it's being done everywhere where they have these startups. Sometimes people pay like a really hefty deposit when they check something out, but we want it to be cost neutral to customers for equity reasons, so that we're not just biasing towards people that can afford to be a part of the system. We want it to work for everyone. And so really a customer wouldn't pay anything unless they didn't return the container. And then we have return bins conveniently around town, downtown Hilo, maybe at the parks, maybe at the port for tourists that got their food when they were out and about and had leftovers. We want to make sure we get our containers back because the imprint or the carbon footprint of a reusable container is much greater than a disposal one. So if we're losing containers, then that's a problem. And then that's when the service providers come in, they go and collect those containers, transport them to a washing facility, and then they'd be redistributed back and circulating these containers within the community. This is just a few examples just to show you that like this is not just some fictional imaginary thing, like it is happening in places. This is Tim Hortons, which I guess is like the Dunkin' Donuts of Canada. They're piloting this project in Vancouver using cups with shareware and Return It. I think for them, you pay like a $4 deposit when you get your cup, and then they have these convenient kiosks for return. Deliver Zero is another company that is out of New York City, and they're working with 80 restaurants, which is a decent amount, but probably a very small fraction of the amount of restaurants that actually exist in a large place like New York City. But this is like an app where you would order through Deliver Zero through one of their partnering restaurants, and then you'd get your food in a reusable container. They I think then you can have them pick it up for you at your home, or you drop it off at a participating restaurant. Dispatch Goods is in the Bay Area. They're doing a bunch of different models. They're using stainless steel containers, which is like the type of material we use is a big point of debate right now in the very small reuse community. But they're doing some business to business for produce, and then they're also doing the takeout as well. And so what's really key about establishing this systems of reuse is that it really needs to be operating at scale, where there's an ecosystem in place so that ideally most restaurants are participating in the program and that it's the default as opposed to an option. You want to have collection bins conveniently so that people can return containers as they're going about their daily business. We need the washing infrastructure and the logistics in place to make the system work. We also need the clear, consistent signage and cues for residents to participate in the program. The behavior change part is key. And then we also need those high volumes, because if you don't have the high volumes of container cycling, then the costs don't go down as well as if we did. And I think too, like, part of the vision of Perpetual, and I think it's a really genius one, is that they almost want to like put all the pieces together and then turn the system on overnight. From a human behavior change, that's much easier. And humans do change our behavior. Like, we all really quickly learned to like put on masks and sanitize our hands, like as we walked into stores during the pandemic. If it is the norm and there's like that social pressure and that's what we do, I think it's easier for people to follow those systems. And so this is just kind of an imaginary map, but we could draw one for Hilo, where, you know, people can get reusable containers wherever they're shopping or eating. They can return them conveniently as they go about their business, and that the reverse logistics can take place smoothly and seamlessly. And so the approach that Perpetual is taking is really like this long thing that starts with just mapping engagement and goes all the way to the launch of the system and improving systems. Where we are at right now, we've done that mapping engagement. You know, we've talked to a lot of different people since the summer of last year. We started having conversations and you know, figured, not surprisingly, that this is something that as an island community we're interested in. We became their local partner, and soon to be happening is this circular assessment protocol will be taking place. And that is with University of Georgia Lab. They do this protocol all over the world, really, where they go in and they assess the circularity of packaging within a community. And so they do, you know, transects of litter. They go in and do brand audits and look at like what products are packaged in, to really see how circular the packaging system already is and like what opportunities there is for leakage of litter into the environment. And so they'll be coming here in August to do that, and it'll create baseline data for Hilo. And then as we progress, hopefully, to launching something, we could do this protocol again and see how things have changed. So where we are at right now is in this design phase. And I think I've meant to mention in the beginning, but I'm partly here to inform EMC on this project, but also to get feedback from you guys, because that's what we're doing right now. We're like going to nonprofits. We'll be doing, you know, we're fielding information, getting feedback of like hurdles and challenges, or who we should talk to and what we need to do to make this a reality. We are planning some community design workshops. They're really going to be more like fun events for us. They've done these in Galveston and Ann Arbor already. We're probably going to take like a longer period of time to engage with like all the diversity of different groups that we need to in Hilo, but we will probably do a very large event in the fall, in October, partnering with East Hawai'i Cultural Center and other small things. So that's where we're at right now. I think we hope to wrap up all the community engagement, and then we would move on to actually designing something, and then that would also go out to people for comment. And then if we see that we want to continue further, Perpetual is prepared to continue on and get us all the way to launching a system. Just some fundamentals of the system design for this. We want a system that is viable across the board, right? We need something that's economically viable, that it's a self-sustaining program, that it's cost neutral to consumers, and that it's a comparable cost for businesses. We need something that's environmentally viable. It is very possible to design a reuse system that's worse for the environment, especially if we're not getting our containers back, excuse me. And getting those high return rates is really critical. We also want something that's technically viable. We need to make sure that our containers are clean and sanitized and everybody feels safe and happy about reusing a container. And that we can have just really well seamless managed operation, like that when a business needs containers, they actually can get them in stock and have enough that they need. And then there also needs to be the social viability. So this is like, it's a system that works for everyone, all income levels that you don't have to have a smartphone or a credit card or a bank account to participate. And so Perpetual's role in this process, they're not going to come here and be our service provider, right? Like they're just helping us get the system established, that design and the implementation piece. So they're supporting the cities in doing that. They're bringing the technical expertise. I didn't mention it, but Dagny has actually run a reusable cup program with Vessel. She's no longer a part of that company, but she has on the ground experience of doing that. They are mobilizing funding, which is really amazing and great. They brought some money for us to hire on people, and I have a slide where I talk about the other funding that we've applied for. And they can also facilitate bringing the reuse service provider. I think my vision and dream is really to see a business that's created here on island, as opposed to having someone else come in from the outside. But we'll see. That's part of the community engagement. Part of this is that something that broadly we want to see here in Hilo, or is that just my dream and Ellen's dream? I'll go on. So just a few more slides. So the funders, they have a bunch of different funders that are funding their personnel. The Plastic Solution Fund is actually the grant that brought funding to Zero Waste Hawai'i Island to hire on people to do this work. As you guys know, we applied for the Swiffer grant to bring money for the reuse infrastructure for the washing facility. We just got word this week that we passed the first hurdle of that. So now they'll be evaluating that proposal based on merit. There's also the Rio grant. And then we applied just recently in the last couple of weeks for this EPA pollution prevention grant in cooperation with the Hawai'i Sea grant. That will be a large chunk of money to do the business engagement piece, not only with businesses, but with school cafeterias and Meals on Wheels programs. And then also get not the containers themselves, but the racks and a lot of the materials that you would need to have a reuse system. And also the consulting and technical assistance for them. And then Zero Waste Hawai'i Island, we applied for the Aloha Aina Community Foundation, Hawaii Community Foundation grant recently, and that would help to fund some of the those community design workshops, among other things. And so these are all the partners. I won't go into detail. Each city they're working with has a local partner. I do want to highlight the University of Chicago Data Science Institute. They are actually working on doing the modeling to figure out the volume of containers we would need circulating to make this system work, which is actually a really tricky thing to figure out. And I'll leave it there. Just now throw it out to EMC. We're welcome. Ask any questions. Ellie's here. I'll let her take over. Answering questions because she's really amazing. And but really just feedback from you guys is really what we're seeking today, because this is part of our community engagement is talking to you guys and getting your thoughts. So I will stop sharing slides.
Well, and I will start out on behalf of EMC. I assume, wow, it's great. It is exactly the kind of thing that we are wanting to support. And if you run into some walls that you think EMC can help knock down, let us know. I was involved a little bit with the program, and I'm blanking on the school out in Massachusetts that did a summer or an intern type of program here looking at the pros and cons. So I've long been supportive of the idea. I think Hilo is a good place to start because it's kind of stable, unlike the rest of the island where I live. So I think it is a wonderful start and hopefully be a good case study for others to take advantage of. And that Perpetual outfit is doing all the things that I was worried we couldn't do. So yay for finding them. Others?
Melissa, but I'll go after.
Melissa?
I mean, that's amazing, Jen. That is just incredible what you're doing, and it's huge. Like, it's really amazing and huge. So thank you. I had a logistical question, because in Hilo there's so many places that are takeout, where people often dine in, like they get their food in to-go containers, but then they end up dining in, and then they end up throwing away their containers like at the restaurant themselves. I wonder, like, could part of it be that people can return their container to the restaurant, like, there, and just leave it there? Because it seems to me like that would be the absolute easiest way to get the containers back. Because I guess that is a concern, that people take it and then they just throw it away, as they would, a regular to-go container, just because that's our habit. That's what we're used to doing, and of course, like, it's, like you said, with mask wearing, like, I absolutely agree, people can change and they can change their habits, but to make it really easy and super convenient, like, is that part of the model where the collection could be at the restaurant itself?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be one place. And then there would be kiosks around, that people could return. I mean, they're expensive. I don't know if we're going to have as many as we have garbage cans. I mean, vision, like, long term, once it's beyond startup, maybe we do. I can already see, like, some hurdles that we have in terms of placing things from our discussion with some of the port people, and you guys know all of I think you probably understand, like, the state employees and all of that. So I think that's where, like, EMC could maybe come in and be helpful with navigating that part of it. I think the transfer stations are a critical place to have containers, because we, like, we eat at a restaurant, we take our leftovers home. They might, like, sit in a refrigerator for a week, and then we need to have a place to dispose of them, or, to return them to. So we want to make it convenient, and that's part of the design process, right? And, like, understanding the behavior of Hilo and what works for Hilo. Like, that's when we say we're doing these community design workshops. It is to, like, field information from people about what's going to work for them. And I think it's also a little bit complicated to just do this in one location, because we know Hilo is a place that people from Keao and from the Hamakua, like, they're coming here to shop, and they might be taking things home with them. So we also need to think about, how do we make it so that those people can return containers? In an ideal, beautiful world of my vision for Hawai'i Island's future, I think, like, having curbside pickup would be the easiest way for us to get those containers back conveniently from everyone. If you can just put your bin out with your reusables and your recyclables and your organic waste, that would be the best. But I think that vision is a little far off.
Lee.
Yeah, this is Commissioner McIntosh. It's kind of like a comment and suggestion. This sounds very similar to way before my time, when the dairies would drop off milk bottles at everyone's house, and then you would drink it, and then you would return it, and they would reuse the milk bottles. And similar to, I know at least Coke. My mom would tell me stories about where they would take the Coke bottles and then they would return it, and they get, like, just enough money back as an incentive that they could buy another Coke bottle, like a free Coke bottle, and drink it. So I'm not sure why those programs died out or quit, but you could research and see what has been done in the past, and see how you could avoid a similar fate that befell them.
Laura.
Yeah, for sure. This is not a new idea.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate your work in putting together that presentation and all the work behind the scenes. I'm really glad to see that you've connected with Perpetual. I know that they're connected with the Circular Cities and things that we've been working on from the Senate office. And that this is just a beautiful, detailed presentation, extending the work of, that we had done in our office. And I just wanted to really appreciate you for getting into that detail and coming to the EMC to present. It's really, really encouraging. and brings so much hope. I would love to see help bring it to fruition. I also see that it's a really good closed loop opportunity, just like who you mentioned was working with University of Hawaii, but the DOE schools, because their breakfast and lunch is all single use. And if we just, it's mind blowing to calculate the numbers of forks that go to our landfill every day.
Mhm.
And that's just forks. So thank you so much. I would, love to help in any way further this, because this is exactly what we are working on in our waste to wealth vision for state policy. So mahalo.
Other comments, other commissioners?
Well, John here, hopefully you jumped into getting some cost benefit analysis going on with the participants. How they feel about what they're getting for what they're getting. And their point of view in terms of what would make the containers more likely for them to recycle.
Okay. I mean, that was just a comment, yeah, not a question?
Question.
Oh, it was a question?
A comment. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a lot to swallow. If others have some ideas, obviously you're welcome to get in touch with Jennifer. And if you think of some things that EMC specifically could do other than give you applause, go for it. Let me know and we'll get you back on the agenda.
Jen, just got a question for you. I put my hand down, I guess. Great presentation. Thank you. Have you worked with the Department of Health from a health point of view? Have you researched it? And what type of requirement the health department do you think would be looking for?
Yeah, so I mean, we know this is possible because they did the program on the pilot project in Hawai'i on Oahu, which is very similar. And then we have some experience from launching the No Paho pilot. It's very, very, like, Department of Health rules and regulations with food are very specific, like very, very specific. Like just to go into a little detail for the glass bottles, if it was not the business itself, that like Locavore makes that product and puts it on the shelf. If it wasn't them that did that and it was like someone else made the product and then they sold it, like then there would be like a whole different process. So like Department of Health is very like, it's very product specific. I think for the takeout context with restaurants, we know that that's very feasible and doable. And then if we expand into other things, I think we're just gonna have to like deal with those hurdles when they come. I thought about it like early on because like for the No Paho project, we had like huge delay because we got our containers approved and everything. And then the inspector that works with Locavore store like threw like a whole monkey wrench and said like, well, these glass bottles that you're wanting to use are not manufactured, or they're manufactured as single-use bottles, and so you can't use them. And so like I was like, we got to get started way ahead, but the reality is like we're not doing anything yet, right? This is all into the future. And so it's just timing wise, like until we have actually something to be approved that we are going to do X, Y, and Z to Department of Health, it's a little bit, I think it's premature to go and get their approval, but we know like it's possible. And I think for the restaurant context, it won't be that complicated, but when we get into like something like a product that's being made and put on the shelf, then that's where we might have more hurdles. So I guess the short answer to your question is yes. And the dishwashing facility part, like, I don't know about that. But they have their regulations and rules and ways of doing things. And so we'll cross the bridge when it comes in terms of getting all the approvals that we need.
when we get the pre-treatment rule, we'll be able to tell what the water discharge from this dishwasher outfit we'll have to deal with. And then it'll be right in our wheelhouse. I'm gonna have to call time. And again, thank you again, Jennifer, for your presentation. And I think we all wish you the best and keep us posted. And thank you. But trying to get back on the agenda, I'd like this meeting not to go until noon. I'm going to propose that going back to unfinished business, item 2, which was the ordinance and the DEM rules for banning the landfilling of recyclable materials. I pulled together both of these items as a conceptual piece. There are lots and lots of details that need to be worked out, lots of issues. And my first goal was just to see how do you make them work together. How detailed should you have the ordinance? Can you fit it into the current way that DEM does its rules? And was an interesting exercise. We have lots of issues, lots of good comments came in from testifiers as well as the commissioners here, particularly around the issue of incineration, pyrolysis. Some of what I did was just placeholders and to put some rough and dirty things. I would like, and for the sake of time, go back and I'll gin up a couple more versions of these two and include maybe some options for different approaches that could be taken. I know there are some people who think it ought to all be by ordinance and passed by the council. I used to work at EPA and write regulations. And so the idea of Congress, or in this case, our county council, writing these very specific technical rules drives me crazy. Like they want to burn all our, or turn all of our waste into biochar and do it in 2 years. So get to work. Nah, let's back off. So I will come up with some new options and we'll talk about it next meeting. Laura and I have been going back and forth and we didn't have a lot of time to have conversations. So there will be some more changes and be thinking about to bring to the next meeting what kinds of things you would like to see. But I think we've got to move on. If that's okay with everybody. All right, chair defers. And we'll come back, because I put too much work into it to just dump it.
It's gotta get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and basically, we all want you work the pyramid. You do not generate the waste in the first place. If you do, reuse it until can't be used anymore. Then recover everything that you possibly can for reuse and don't use virgin materials. And then if you have to downscale it, turn it into park benches, although how many park benches we need. Anyway, so there is a hierarchy and we should work it. And I put incineration in there intentionally because I know it would bug everybody. But it is a last resort. If your landfill is full and you have to site another landfill, that is not going to happen on this island or any island. Incineration is probably the only thing left. Other than the random ditches here and there. But anyway, it's work the hierarchy. So I will try and see if I can lay out different options and support, really work it. And it's only a last resort issue. I mean, the last resort is putting in the landfill. And in some cases that's the better life cycle choice. So you have something
I do.
absolutely.
I just want to push back on that for a second and say that if we are working that hierarchy, we won't have that same, you know, pressure on the landfill. And also then if we're really working that hierarchy of prioritization, incineration is not viable because it needs feedstock, right? Like it needs in order for it to be beneficial, my understanding, not beneficial, that's the wrong word. But in order for it to be even work and viable.
Feasible.
To happen, so
Feasible,
we're really prioritizing that hierarchy.
If we manage,
we
if we
can't do
manage to
incineration.
get to zero waste,
Let's do it.
we will have changed the laws of physics. And that'll be something, I'll be long dead, so you guys work with it.
Okay.
Um,
I'm down for it. Let's do it.
So you're gonna bail on.
no. Anyway, all right, so back to the
Yeah.
agenda. I'm driving our corporate council crazy here. And our secretary says I'm going to Australia. I don't care what you guys do. New business, item 3, I'm gonna defer that one too. That was based on last meeting where we had, Craig describe, the hiccup that happened with the used motor oil. It's back on track, but there may be some things that we can make it better. And so we'll bring that one back. So Ramsey, I gotta give you time to tell us what it is. You disappeared. Why you're growing a beard when it's summertime, and also give you a report on what DEM is up to.
Well, to answer the first question, I guess maybe I get better respect. You gotta get the gray and you gotta get the beard and no, I don't know. I just don't have the time to shave, I guess.
We know
Maybe
you're
it's
working 2 or 3 hours a day eating and sleeping.
I really don't get to sleep sometimes, so that's a challenge by itself. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe, trying to change my look, I guess. I don't know. Mid-age crisis. It could be so many things.
Quit killing time. We gotta move. Tell us what your department's up to.
We have a lot. I know Greg had put some items. We still working with our Hilo treatment plan, as you all know. The low bid came almost double the price that we had budgeted for. So it's amazing how the construction market is just, it's outrageous to do anything nowadays. It just, yeah. So we back to the drawing board and trying to, package both together, phase 1 and phase 2, and trying to bid it out with the hope that we'll get a better price within our budget for both phases. It is. I mean, when you look at one project and compare it to the entire county operating fund, it's just mind-boggling. But it's going to continue being a challenge for DEM. Things is not getting cheaper; it's getting more expensive. As far as wastewater, many other projects are being worked on and trying to navigate through what EPA and Department of Health requiring. Solid waste, as I mentioned earlier, prior meeting, we looking at solid waste system operational analysis with the idea is to select a consultant. We in the final step to finalize the scope with the intent for them to come in and analyze our current system, from the way we handle the waste to transporting the waste to the funding to what could be recommended to more efficiency, recycling, diversion, talking to stakeholders. They'll be talking to EMC as well, council members, trying to figure out, is the land filling is going vertical versus, because we only got about 15 to 20 years remaining, so we gotta do something. So we're in the process of doing that study to figure out what is the best direction moving forward. There's possibility of renegotiating with Waste Management Hawaii on the filling methodologies so we could extend the lifespan of that landfill probably for another, 30, 50 years. So we're looking at that as well with the concept of getting some dollars back on cost per ton on our current agreement. So that also is in the hopper. And what Doug Adams has stated earlier, the department working with their department, trying to figure out, how could we put our current resources rather than, going to a landfill or going to the ocean to a better, different research. So, the idea is, yes, you take in a resource, but instead of getting, dumped and disposed of, could we regenerate a better reuse of it? So, and that's what, we try to navigate through murky water to get information so it could guide us how to move forward.
So
And
did you-
I'm here to take any questions if you guys have any other particular subjects you guys want to talk about. I'm here to answer questions.
Well, to back up on the solid waste operations analysis, have you picked contractor, consultant?
Probably by the end of the day.
No.
We work in the little details. I have a meeting at 1:30 to get clarification from them on making sure some of the words within the, what they submitted on the scope. I just wanted to make sure we use the right wordage.
Okay, I just wanted to know the status on that. Anybody else have any specific questions on what Ramsey zipped through? Well, John?
Yeah. I mean, I keep going back to this, get the disposal fee at the point of purchase idea. And we come up with generation after generation after generation of proposals to deal with the solid waste. We never have a figure for what it's really going to cost us. Literally, oh, that's interesting. Literally, this starts 40 years ago in a room directly above me. And Barbara Bell, myself, and a woman by the name of Laurel Decker, who was starting Recycle Hawaii, are sitting there with the guy who was in charge of the solid waste division when the solid waste division was in Public Works. And all we wanted to do was restart a recycling program. And he came and told us no. There will be no recycling in the county of Hawaii as long as I'm in this chair. Well, we got a word of the chair. But it really hasn't, it's a lock loop. And we have to figure out some way to break that. And the only way we're going to do that is with getting control of the cost. We got to know what it's going to be up front.
Well,
John, we know the cost. The whole solid waste division operation is $39 million. And we take 600 tons, so we know the cost. It's the matter of just trying.
You got it for the moment until those other 10,000 people get off the plane.
Well, remember, we keep talking about this. Your challenge is, it's in the charter under property taxes. People part of the property tax is to provide solid waste services. You're not gonna be able to charge pay as you throw unless something goes to the public, either through a ballot or legally. We need to navigate how to change the methodology of revenue generation and collection. Could we, I mean, we talked about it. I don't know if it went to legal or not. The
Yeah,
idea is,
we're still waiting for analysis from Corporation Council
okay,
about how can we change that model? Are we stuck with property tax? And I forget the specific words. They're in the minutes someplace. We made a motion this time, so that's just not ready yet. And we will come back and hear what options we are, but we haven't.
and it may require ledge, a new ledge that maybe need to be introduced, put it out to the public and their separate ballots. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, you're right. When we first started, even that was the first question I brought, you know, can we do it in land use fee? Can we find a different way to collect? But unfortunately, the current law and the property tax provide for that service, therefore you can't choose.
I get that part.
We are going to get an analysis from Corporation Council, so we'll have one more piece of information.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, the whole funding issue is, I don't know, half of why we exist as a commission.
It's 90% of why we exist.
Okay, 90%. Laura,
Are we able to see a copy of the RFI? Ramsey, is it possible to send that?
What RFI?
Oh,
for the operation analysis?
Once we select the consultant, you're talking about the operational study, the scope service?
oh, well, I assumed that you had or there's RFP for the consulting or?
Which one? I mean, you're talking about the operational study? This is consultant selection.
Okay.
It's the current consultant list that the county have to do this study.
Got it.
That's different than what Doug was talking about.
Okay.
I just
Gotcha.
want to make.
Okay, got you. Clarify,
So
sorry.
what we can get to everybody, if you'd like, is once you've nailed the scope, give us a copy of it. Is that okay?
Yeah, hopefully by 1:30, because we're
We'll
supposed
get
to sign a
everything.
contract. No, the idea is because fiscal year is ending in 2 weeks or less. So we have to get that contract signed before June 30th. So
To move on, guys.
We got a hand up.
Melissa,
Yeah, I have a quick question about, do any of us know that the TAT tax that's being collected for visitors, you know, do any of us know if any of that tax is going towards the solid waste fund, or is the solid waste fund solely property taxes? Because I'd be curious, like that TAT tax, like, is there a way to tap into that? Because that tax is quite high. I think it's like 15% or something. And we all know there's tons of short-term rentals, and those people, you know, the people who are visiting the island are contributing to our waste situation. So it seems to me like
that was something that the council looked at, and no, there wasn't a way to redirect it, as I recall.
but remember, tourism, hotels, they pay tipping because they commercial. So our fund is being funded through tipping fees for commercial. Residential comes from general fund. That's what makes the department budget is tipping fees versus residential from property taxes.
okay.
So I'm gonna declare, I think, that off agenda. And Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong.
And I've asked you guys to move on because that is something that is not on the agenda and we're at 11:18 already.
And she wants to go. All right, the budget you just mentioned. looking at item 7.4, you got what you got from the council, right? The budget's been
Yeah.
nailed. And there was a question Dell had, but I'm also curious about, how much of that is going to be directed at recycling / diversion programs? Do you call?
I don't have that number, but it's, there's definitely the operation, public educations, we have business services, we have HER, and we have Big Island metal recycling. I think it's about $7 million for that.
So that's for the contracts we have.
Right, because we have
Yeah.
about $5 million with HER. We have business service for cardboard, white goods in the range of $1 million, I believe, and $800 to $1 million. And then we have scrap metal, and we have our opera. So we're looking at probably between $7 and $8 million, probably approximately. It goes to that section.
Okay,
Jump change at this point.
but in terms of your staffing and new initiatives around recycling and diversion.
The staffing is, we didn't add staffing on that section, but we have vacancies that we're trying to fill. So, yeah.
Are they posted?
And like I said, this is almost 20% of the entire department. I mean, that solid waste division. I mean, 20% goes to recycling section.
Okay.
It gives you an idea. There is a lot of money going there.
Laura asked a question whether the vacancies are posted, are they live?
Some of them we gonna have our new human resource specialist is gonna start June 28th. As you all know, we've been with that one for almost a year. And some of this, I think there's the coordinator specialist. One was advertised within the county. We had nobody applied, so now it's gonna go out to outside the county system. So that should be going out soon.
You have more questions?
Well, I'm just recalling from, I believe it was last meeting when we were in Hilo, so 2 meetings ago, that you had said that recycling initiatives were on hold. So I just wanted to clarify, new recycling initiatives were on hold until the RFI, the other RFI comes back with information.
Remember, we don't put anything on hold because we got contracts. I don't know how, maybe.
No, new initiatives. Looking into new initiatives, not the current, obviously not the current contracts, but new initiatives around recycling.
We're always looking for ideas, so it's not on hold. It's a matter of just, if there's a new idea that's gonna work and we shouldn't put it on hold. The idea is we're gonna have the additional study, at the same, we're gonna work on it in parallel, It's like, it's very dynamic, so it's.
You also had a question that I put on the agenda for you.
Yes.
About the flocculants used in wastewater treatment plants.
You just have the question about flocculant.
It's
The polymers.
you want to ask.
What is the question? I mean.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you had received it ahead of time so that if you needed to, but what types and quantities of polymer flocculants are used in wastewater? Why are they used? Just a overview on that. It's something that I had learned. That is done, and I know it's done in other municipalities, but just feedback from you on what that is all about and why.
Yeah, polymer is usually used to enhance the treatment of wastewater. So because you have suspended particle within the wastewater, the water. So when you add polymer attached to it and it's settled, and it's easy for us to treat the water from these particulars that floating within the water. So they get attached to that polymer, and the polymer will be easy to settle. And that's how we treat our treatment plant, the effluent. So it's additives to enhance the wastewater treatment and capture any suspended solids or particulars, either organic or soluble, that could be attached to that polymer. And it allows for it to settle, then we could manage it that way. It's a treatment. It's for the treatment purification of the waste.
And then that solid's a sludge,
What's
is
Right.
landfill, right?
Yeah, and then once it become biosolid, right, and become the sludge. And currently we taking it to the landfill, yes.
But what stage in the landfilling is that? It's added in the sludge stage, that last stage?
No,
or-
you add it in the clarifier stage. You trying to clarify the water before you send it out to the ocean.
So do we know, is there determination of how much or if any is in the water that doesn't get attached, that releases polymer in the water as it's exiting in the R2 stage?
Yeah, everything, the polymer itself will settle, because the way it's designed, the way it's manufactured to allow for it to because it's going to settle on the bottom. And because we go through multiple we go through primary, secondary, and disinfection, and all that process will eliminate it. So as far as I know, nothing makes it at the final effluent.
And do we have an estimate on the cost of that part of the treatment?
I think the amount of polymers we get, I don't have the exact number, maybe annually in the, I don't know if Chris online, I think maybe between 150,000 a year just for the product itself. We're not as huge as city and county. I remember city and county, we were in the range of $1 million a year or so, but because their flow is kind of 100 times our amount, 1,000 actually. We about total county flow, 5 MGD for the whole county. City and county at almost 100 million gallon per day. So our usage is minimal in comparison, but yeah.
Well, I think if you really want to get the chemistry down and find that, we'll contact Chris for that.
Sounds good, yeah.
Talk to Chris Loudon or our operators, but yeah, start with the Chris Loudon.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, just back at general, anybody have additional questions at this time for DEM? Anything you want to tell us, Kelly, that we need to jump on right now? Or before next meeting?
Nope, all projects are on schedule. We're going to open the link to commenting on the website for the Puna project. Once the facility plan comes out, we thought that was important to get more comments on that. But besides that, things are rolling pretty smoothly.
I'm glad you brought facility planning. We just signed a contract with Corolla to do countywide fact planning, facility planning documentation for countywide. Also that includes cesspool master conversion plan for the entire island, and updating our, looking into our sewer collection, force mains, and So its full analysis is gonna be done by Corolla to do countywide on the wastewater.
What is that name? Do you know what that name is?
Sorry. Correct. Yeah, I know.
Corolla?
Yeah,
Okay.
Corolla.
Okay,
Corolla
thanks.
Engineering.
Great. I can't wait to see results from that. Okay, moving right along. Closing out section 7. Future agenda, obviously, we've deferred a couple of items, the recyclables landfill ban items, as well as used motor oil program. If there are other items that people want to see and talk about next meeting, send them to me or mention them right now. We'll see if we get the Corporation Council analysis on our last funding question. We'll put that in there for sure. But again, just let me know and I'll see how we can fold it in. I'm hoping that we can have a presentation from Nick Resnick of Hanaho Recycle hauling pickup, I don't know, about some concepts that he's been looking into on mini MRFs. So again, some more information of things that are potentially out there on staying up at the higher end of the pyramid for solid waste. Our number 9, our next meeting is July 26th in Kona. So if you're not going to make it, please let Peter know. We're skimming awfully close on. Oh, good, she showed back up. Speaking of quorum, we need to have.
I'm here. I just have to do something.
You're
real
here. That's okay. I'll let you bend over and pick something up off the floor. It's all right. So anyway, just let us know because it can be tight for us. Anything anybody else has got to absolutely talk about right now? No. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great discussions.